Most people who meditate will never experience what we're about to describe. Not because it's impossible, not because it requires decades in a monastery, but because almost everything taught about jhana, in books, online courses, and meditation retreats, comes not from the Buddha, but from commentaries written 1,000 years after he died. Today, we go to the source. The Pāli Canon, the Nikayas, the oldest layer of Buddhist teaching on record. And what we find there will surprise you, whether you're a long-time meditator, a neuroscientist, or someone who simply wants to understand what the deepest states of human consciousness actually look like. For more than 2,500 years, these teachings have guided countless people from confusion to clarity, from restlessness to profound peace. Before we enter the jhanas, we need to understand what problem they were solving. In the Buddha's India, the mind was not a philosophical abstraction. It was a problem to be solved, a source of suffering to be investigated, understood, and transformed. The word jhana, spelled Jhana with a long A, comes from the Pali root meaning to burn, or to know deeply. Some scholars link it to the Sanskrit jhana, which became chan in Chinese and zen in Japanese. But in the Pali Nikayas, the Daya, Majjhima, Samyutta, and Anguttara collections, the Buddha uses a remarkably consistent formula to describe each jhana. This is important. The formula repeats across dozens of suttas. That repetition is not accident. It is precision. It is the Buddha saying, this is exactly what it is. Not approximately, not metaphorically, exactly. There are two main sources most Western meditators encounter when they learn about jhana. The first is the Visuddhimagga, the Path of Purification, written by Buddhaghosa around the 5th century CE. About 1,000 years after the Buddha. The second is the Pāli Canon itself, the Nikayas. The Visuddhimagga describes jhana as a state of deep, laser-like one-pointedness, so concentrated that you become essentially unresponsive to the outside world. Rigid, stationary, disconnected. The Nikayas describe something fundamentally different. Scholar Bhikkhu Sujato, one of the foremost translators of the Pāli Canon today, has noted that the sutta description of jhana is more fluid, more embodied, more present than the commentarial model suggests. In the Kuladukakanda Sutta and across the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha's monks eat, walk, and communicate while in proximity to jhana. The absorption is deep, but it is not catatonic. Why does this matter for you? Because if you've been meditating for years waiting for the hard jhana, described in the Visuddhimagga, the complete shutdown of the senses, you may have been waiting for something the Buddha never described. Now, let's go to the actual formula. Let's read what the canon says, word for word. The first jhana. Here is the formula as it appears in Daya Nikaya 2, the Samanaphala Sutta, the fruits of the contemplative life, one of the most complete descriptions in the entire canon. Vivekava kamehi, vivekarakusalahi dharmehi, savatakam savikaram vivikajam pitasukam pathamam janam upasampaja viharati. Translation: quite withdrawn from sensuality, withdrawn from unskillful mental qualities, one enters and dwells in the first jhana, which has applied thought and sustained thought, and which has rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. Let's unpack every single word of this. Viveka kamehi, withdrawn from sensuality. Not destroyed, not annihilated, withdrawn. The Pali word viveka implies a temporary setting aside, like stepping away from a noisy room. The pull of sensory craving is not active in this moment. Vivekarakusalahi dharmehi, withdrawn from unskillful mental qualities. The 5 hindrances, sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and doubt. These are the 5 primary obstacles the Buddha identifies across the Nikayas. In first jhana, they are in abeyance, temporarily suspended, savatakam savikaram, with applied and sustained thought. This is crucial, and this is where the Nikayas and the Visuddhimagga diverge significantly. Vitaka is often translated as applied thought, the initial placement of attention on the meditation object. Vikara is sustained thought, the continued engagement with that object. In first jhana, thinking is still present. Not random discursive thought, but directed, engaged mental contact with the object of meditation. The mind is not blank. It is acutely, vitally engaged. Vivikajam pitasukam, rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. Piti, rapture. This is a physical mental quality. In 5.28, the Buddha lists 5 grades of piti. Minor rapture, goosebumps, momentary rapture, flashes of light, flooding rapture, waves through the body, uplifting rapture, a sense of levitation, and pervading rapture, the whole body saturated. In first jhana, some form of piti is present, the exact grade varies by practitioner. Sukha, pleasure or happiness. A more stable, settled quality than piti. Less excited, more content. Together, piti sukha is not a manufactured feeling. It is described as arising naturally, born of seclusion, as a direct result of the mind withdrawing from its habitual agitation. The second jhana, the Pāli formula, Vitakavikaranam vupasama ajatam sampasadanam sataso ekadibhavam avatakam avikaram samadhijam pittasukam dutiyam jhanam upasampaja viharati. Translation: with the stilling of applied and sustained thought, one enters and dwells in the second jhana, which has internal confidence and unification of mind, and is without applied thought and sustained thought, and has rapture and pleasure born of stillness. Notice what has happened. Vitaka and vikara, the applied and sustained thinking, have quieted. This is not a forced suppression. The Pāli word vupasama means a natural settling, a calming. The way a disturbed pond settles on its own when you stop throwing stones. Ajatam sampasadanam, internal confidence or serene trust. This quality appears only in second jhana. The Pāli commentator Buddhism calls it pasada, a lucid clarity, like clear water. But in the nikayas themselves, it refers to a deep inner settledness, a knowing that the practice is working, without needing to think about it. The mind is no longer verbalizing its experience. It is simply being in it. Sataso ekadibhavam, unification of the mind. Ekagata in some formulas, one-pointedness, but here rendered as ekadibhava, the mind collected into a single point of lucid presence. Not contracted, unified. Piti and sukha remain, but they are now born of stillness, samadhija, rather than of seclusion. The quality of the joy has shifted. It's less effervescent, more deeply grounding. Recapitulate: if first jhana is a lake that has calmed from choppy to gently rippling, second jhana is that same lake going perfectly still. And you are no longer on the shore, watching. You are the stillness itself. The third jhana, Pitya ca viraga apekako ca viharati sato ca sampajano, sukanka kaina patisamvadeti, yam tam ariya asikanti, apekako satima sukavahariti tatyam janam upasampaja viharati. Translation: with the fading of rapture, one dwells equanimous and mindful, clearly knowing, and one experiences pleasure with the body. This is what the noble ones describe as one who is equanimous, mindful, and dwelling in pleasure. One enters and dwells in the third jhana. Something remarkable happens here. Piti, the rapture, fades. Not because the state has degraded, but because it has deepened. Piti, for all its beauty, still carries a quality of excitement, a kind of energetic aliveness that, however subtle, is still a form of agitation. In third jhana, even that has been transcended. What remains is sukha, pure pleasure, now suffusing the body. And apeka, equanimity, translated sometimes as indifference, but that is deeply wrong. The Pāli apeka means a perfectly balanced awareness. Not numb, not detached, balanced, like a master goldsmith who neither forces nor neglects the flame. Notice the phrase, experienced with the body. Kaina patisamvadeti, the pleasure is felt physically. This is not a purely mental abstraction. The body participates in the jhana. The canon is explicit here. And notice this extraordinary detail. The noble ones comment on this state. One who is equanimous, mindful, and dwelling in pleasure. This is the only jhana where the canon includes a quotation from noble beings describing it. As if the Buddha is saying, even the awakened ones look at this state and say, this is beautiful. Recapitulate: sati, mindfulness, is still explicitly present in third jhana. And sampajana, clear comprehension. You are not in a trance. You are exquisitely, lucidly aware. The fourth jhana, this is where the canon reaches its summit. Sukhasa ca pahana dukkasa ca pahana, pubhava somanasadomanasanam athingama, adukama sukhama pekasati parasudin katutam janam upasampaja viharati. Translation: with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the earlier disappearance of joy and grief, one enters and dwells in the fourth jhana, which has neither pleasure nor pain, and has purity of equanimity and mindfulness. Read that again. The pleasure, sukha, is abandoned, not suppressed. Abandoned because the mind has gone beyond it to something even more refined. Even somanasa and domanasa, mental joy and mental grief, have already disappeared. These were released earlier in the progression. What remains is adukkamasukha, neither pleasure nor pain, a perfect neutrality of feeling, and apekasati parasuddhi, purity of equanimity and mindfulness. This is the most frequently misunderstood quality in the fourth jhana. The word parasuddhi means complete purity. Equanimity and mindfulness have been refined to their most essential quality, like gold that has been smelted until every impurity is gone. The breath becomes extraordinarily refined here. In MN 36, the Mahasaccaka Sutta, the Buddha, describing his own path to awakening under the Bodhi tree, enters the fourth jhana and notes that his in-breaths and out-breaths have ceased. The Pāli is asasapasasa niruddha. The breathing process is not absent, it has simply become so subtle that it cannot be detected. This is the platform. Recapitulate, the fourth jhana is described in the Nikayas as the essential foundation for the higher knowledges, the avana. From this platform of pure, stable, equanimous awareness, unshaken by pleasure or pain, fully transparent to itself, the mind is ready to see clearly. This is why Ven Analayo, one of the foremost sutta scholars of our time, calls the fourth jhana the launching pad of awakening. Now, the similes. The Buddha does not leave us only with technical formulas. Across the Nikayas, especially DN2 and MN 119, he offers 4 extraordinary similes, one for each jhana. First jhana, the bath powder simile. Imagine a skilled bath attendant who kneads bath powder with water until the moisture thoroughly permeates every grain, without excess water running off. So too, the meditator suffuses their body with the rapture and pleasure of first jhana. Nothing in the body is left untouched. Second jhana, the lake with underground spring. Imagine a lake with no inlet from east, west, north, or south, fed only by an underground spring. Cool water wells up from within, permeating the entire lake. So too, in second jhana, the joy is not imported from outside. It arises internally, from the depths of the practice itself. Third jhana, the lotus in water. Lotus is born in water, growing in water, nourished by water, but rising above the surface untouched by it. So too, the meditator in third jhana is suffused with sukha, permeated by it, but not swept away. The body is saturated, the mind is free. Fourth jhana, the white cloth. Imagine a person seated, wrapped completely in a white cloth, from head to foot, so that no part of the body is uncovered. So too, the meditator in fourth jhana sits with a mind of complete purity, thoroughly pervaded, thoroughly covered by it. Recapitulate, these similes are not decorative. They are diagnostic. They tell you, from the inside, what these states feel like. Not as doctrine, as lived phenomenology. Let's be precise about what the Nikayas do not say about jhana. The canon does not say jhana requires stopping all sensory awareness. The canon does not say jhana is a trance. The canon does not say you must achieve nimitta, the luminous meditation sign described in the Visuddhimagga, before entering jhana. The canon does not say jhana is only for monastics. In SN 35.246 and related passages, lay practitioners, householders, are described as entering jhana. The Pāli word for lay follower, gahapati, appears in contexts where deep meditative attainments are discussed. The question is not, am I qualified for jhana? The question is, have the 5 hindrances temporarily suspended themselves in this moment of practice? If the answer is yes, you may already know more about jhana than you realize. What does this mean for your practice? 3 insights from the Nikayas that can shift how you meditate today. 1. Work with the hindrances, not with the object. The canon's description of jhana entry begins with viveka, withdrawal from the 5 hindrances. Not with concentration technique. The primary work is recognizing and setting aside sensual desire, ill will, sloth, restlessness, and doubt. When these lift, naturally, organically, jhana arises. 2. Don't manufacture the piti. In an 3.100, the Kimsuka Sutta context, the Buddha describes how practitioners with different tendencies approach the path. Forcing piti, trying to create the rapture, is like pushing the spring water from above. The practice is to remove the obstructions, the spring rises on its own. 3. Equanimity is an attainment, not an attitude. Upekkha in fourth jhana is not something you decide to feel. It is the natural residue of a mind that has worked through rapture, through pleasure, and arrived at the bedrock of awareness itself. You cannot shortcut to it, but you can trust that the progression described in the Nikayas has a natural momentum, Each jhana is the ground for the next. The 4 jhanas in the Pāli Canon are not supernatural achievements reserved for spiritual elite. They are a detailed, precise map of what the human mind can do when it stops fighting itself. First jhana, the hindrances lift. Thinking continues. Rapture and pleasure arise. Second jhana, thinking settles. Internal clarity emerges. The joy deepens. Third jhana, rapture fades into pure pleasure. Equanimity appears. The body participates. Fourth jhana, even pleasure transcended. Pure awareness. Perfect balance. The launching pad of liberation. The Buddha did not leave this teaching in vague spiritual language. He left it in a formula, repeated across dozens of suttas, precise enough to recognize, precise enough to cultivate. The question is whether we go to that source, or whether we settle for a commentary written 1,000 years later. Final recapitulate. In our next video, we'll go deeper into the 4 immaterial attainments, the arapihana, that arise beyond the 4th jhana. States the Buddha described as the frontier of conditioned existence. If you want to understand the complete map, the full architecture of what the Buddha said the mind can do, subscribe, and stay close to this channel. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.